Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever wondered what happens when you stop texting and calling a man? We often believe that constant communication is the only way to maintain a connection, but sometimes taking a step back speaks louder than any words ever could. When you stop texting and calling a man, a shift occurs. You reclaim your energy, your worth, and your power. You give him space to realize your value. If a man truly cares, he will notice your absence, and if he doesn't, well, that's a revelation in itself. Today, I want to share with you 9 key things that happen when you stop reaching out to a man. When you stop texting and calling a man, one of the first things that happens is that he starts to wonder about you. If he has grown accustomed to you always initiating conversations, checking in, or making plans, your sudden silence will feel like a disruption to his routine. At first, he may not notice right away, especially if he is distracted with work, friends, or personal interests. However, as time goes on, he will start to realize that something is missing. Men are naturally curious creatures. When they experience a sudden change in behavior, their minds begin to analyze the situation. He may start questioning why you haven't reached out. Something wrong? Are you upset? Are you losing interest? These thoughts can create a sense of intrigue, and in many cases it sparks a reaction. Instead of him assuming that you'll always be there, he begins to feel a shift in the dynamic. This also triggers something psychological. Scarcity creates value. When someone is always available, they can be taken for granted. But when their presence is suddenly withdrawn, it forces the other person to pay attention. It's like when you misplace an item that you always had within reach, you don't realize how much you needed it until it's gone. The same applies to communication in relationships. Another thing that happens is that he may start checking his phone more often, wondering if he somehow missed a message from you. If he is used to seeing your name pop up on his screen regularly, its absence will feel noticeable. He may even find himself scrolling through old conversations, reminiscing about the connection you shared. Beyond just missing the texts and calls, he might also begin to wonder about your life. What are you doing? Who are you spending time with? Have you moved on? This can trigger a mix of emotions in him: curiosity, regret, and sometimes even jealousy. If he truly cares, these thoughts will weigh on his mind, and he may eventually feel compelled to reach out to you. However, the most important takeaway here is that when you stop initiating contact, you give him the opportunity to show how much he values you. If he reaches out, it's a sign that he misses you and wants to keep the connection alive. If he doesn't, then that also tells you something important. Perhaps he was never as invested as you thought. Either way, you gain clarity, and that alone is powerful. When you stop texting and calling a man, one of the most powerful shifts that occurs is within yourself. You begin to regain control of your emotions, something that may have been unconsciously dictated by his responses or lack thereof. Many people don't realize how much emotional energy they invest in waiting for a message, overanalyzing a reply, or wondering when the next call will come. This cycle can create unnecessary stress, anxiety, and even self-doubt. Think about how many times you've checked your phone waiting for him to respond. Every notification sparks a mix of anticipation and hope, only to be met with disappointment when it's not from him. If you've ever felt frustrated by delayed responses or confused by mixed signals, you know how emotionally draining this can be. The simple act of withdrawing from that cycle brings an incredible sense of relief. By stepping back, you remove the emotional roller coaster that comes with constant communication. You no longer find yourself wondering if you said the right thing, rereading old conversations for hidden meanings, or feeling anxious when he takes hours or even days to respond. Instead, you reclaim your inner peace and emotional stability. This also allows you to become more self-aware. When you're constantly reaching out to someone, your emotions can become entangled with their actions, making it difficult to see the situation clearly. But when you take a step back, you start to recognize patterns. Was he truly engaging in meaningful conversations? Or were you carrying most of the dialogue? Did he make an effort to check in on you? Or were you always the one initiating? These realizations help you understand the true nature of the relationship without the emotional cloudiness that constant communication can create. Another important shift that happens is that you start to focus on your own happiness rather than relying on someone else for validation. Instead of seeking reassurance from him, you turn inward and remind yourself that your worth is not defined by his attention. When you stop making him the center of your emotional world, you naturally redirect that energy toward yourself, your goals, passions, and personal well-being. Regaining control of your emotions also strengthens your confidence. When you are no longer dependent on his texts or calls to feel secure, you develop a stronger sense of self-worth. You begin to realize that you don't need his constant reassurance to feel good about yourself. You are whole and complete on your own. This newfound emotional stability makes you more attractive not just to him, but to everyone around you. People are naturally drawn to those who are in control of their emotions and exude self-assurance. Ultimately, by pulling back and allowing yourself to detach from the emotional grip of waiting for his attention, you step into a position of power. You are no longer reactive to his behavior. Instead, you become proactive about your own emotional well-being. And that, in itself, is a transformative experience. One of the most profound things that happens when you stop texting and calling a man is that he begins to realize your value. As human beings, we tend to take for granted what is always available. When someone is constantly reaching out, checking in, and making an effort, it's easy to assume they will always be there. But the moment that stops, something shifts. It creates an absence that forces a person to reevaluate what they had. At first, he might not notice. If he's used to you always initiating conversations, planning meetups, or showing concern, he may assume you're just busy or having an off day. But as time passes and he sees that you haven't reached out like you normally do, he will start to feel the difference. That absence creates space for him to reflect on the role you played in his life. Suddenly, he realizes how much energy you contributed to the relationship. He may start to recall the way you made him feel, how you were always there to support him, listen to him, and show him care. The simple good morning and good night texts, the random check-ins to see how his day was going, the inside jokes, the way you made conversations effortless, all of it starts to stand out when it's no longer there. This is where the concept of contrast comes into play. When something is consistently present, its impact can become less noticeable. But when it's removed, it creates a void that makes a person realize just how significant it was. Think about it like a light in a room. When it's always on, you might not pay attention to it. But the moment it's switched off, you instantly notice the darkness. That's what happens when you stop reaching out. He suddenly becomes aware of the light you brought into his life. Additionally, your silence forces him to question his own actions. He may start to wonder, did I do something wrong? Was I not showing enough appreciation? Why hasn't she texted me? Is she losing interest? These thoughts create a level of discomfort, which can be powerful in making him realize that he should not have taken your efforts for granted. If he truly values you, he will recognize that your presence brought something meaningful into his life. He may start comparing how he felt when you were engaged in the relationship versus how he feels now that you've gone quiet. And more often than not, that comparison makes him appreciate you more. Another psychological factor at play is the fear of loss. When someone believes that something is secure, they don't always put in the effort to maintain it. But when they feel like they might be losing it, they begin to act differently. By stepping back, you create a situation where he has to question whether he still has your attention, which can trigger a desire to win it back. Beyond just missing your presence, he may also begin to see you in a new light. Your decision to stop chasing him demonstrates confidence and self-respect, two traits that are incredibly attractive. When a man sees that you are not desperate for his attention and that you are perfectly fine without constantly reaching out, he begins to view you as someone of high value. This in turn makes him more drawn to you because people naturally want what they feel they could lose. The realization of your value can manifest in different ways. He may start reaching out more, trying to engage in deeper conversations, or making more of an effort to be present in your life. He might even express regret for not reciprocating your energy earlier. But the key takeaway is that by withdrawing your constant attention, you give him the opportunity to truly see what you brought into his life. And that in itself is incredibly powerful. When you stop texting and calling a man, something powerful happens. You shift the power dynamic in the relationship. Whether you realize it or not, relationships often involve an unspoken balance of effort and control. When one person is always initiating, always chasing, and always making sure the connection stays alive, the other person naturally becomes more passive. But the moment you stop, that balance is disrupted and a new dynamic is created. In many cases, when a woman constantly reaches out to a man, she unintentionally puts him in a position where he doesn't have to work for her attention. He knows that no matter what, she will always be there, always checking in, always making the effort to keep things going. This can lead to complacency on his part. He may start taking her presence for granted, knowing that he doesn't have to do much to maintain the connection. But when she suddenly stops, he is forced to reassess the situation. At first, he might not react immediately. He may assume you're just busy or going through something, but as time passes and he realizes that your pattern of reaching out has truly changed, he starts to feel the shift. He no longer has the comfort of knowing that you will always be there, and that realization can be unsettling for him. This is where the power shift truly begins. Instead of you being the one who is constantly giving, the dynamic evens out, or even flips in your favor. Suddenly, he is the one who has to think about whether he should reach out. He has to make the effort to keep the connection alive. He has to question whether he has done enough to keep you interested. This shift is important because it forces him to take responsibility for his role in the relationship. If he genuinely cares about you, he will recognize that he can no longer sit back and expect you to do all the work. He will start putting in effort, sending the first text, making plans, and showing more interest. If he doesn't, then that's also a clear answer. It means he was never willing to invest in the relationship in the first place. And while that realization can be disappointing, it's also liberating because it prevents you from wasting your time on someone who isn't truly invested. Another significant change that happens when you shift the power dynamic is that your own confidence and self-worth increase. You stop feeling like you have to prove your value to someone else. Instead, you stand firm in the knowledge that you are enough as you are. You recognize that your time and energy are valuable and that you shouldn't have to chase someone for their attention. This confidence is incredibly attractive, not just to him, but to anyone around you. Men are naturally drawn to women who have a strong sense of self. When you stop chasing, you send a silent but powerful message: I know my worth, and I don't need to beg for attention. This makes you more desirable because people are naturally more interested in things that seem just out of reach. The moment he senses that you are not dependent on his responses or attention, he starts to see you in a different light. This shift in the power dynamic also affects how you perceive the relationship. When you are the one constantly giving and trying, you may overlook red flags or make excuses for his lack of effort. But when you take a step back, you see things more clearly. You begin to notice whether he truly values you or if he was just comfortable with the attention you gave him. This clarity helps you make better decisions about who deserves your energy. Ultimately, when you stop texting and calling a man, you take back your power. You remind yourself that you are not someone who needs to beg for affection or attention. And in doing so, you create an environment where he either steps up to meet your level of effort or fades away. Either way, you win. One of the most powerful things that happens when you stop texting and calling a man is that you create space that allows him to miss you. In relationships, especially in the early stages, absence truly does make the heart grow fonder. When you are always available, always initiating contact, and always checking in, there is no room for him to experience what life feels like without your presence. But when you step back and stop reaching out, that absence becomes noticeable, and it forces him to reflect on what you brought into his life. At first, he may not immediately register the change. If he is used to you always being the one to reach out first, it might not seem like a big deal if a day or two goes by without hearing from you. He may assume you are just busy or assume that you will eventually text him again. But as time passes and the usual pattern of communication does not resume, a shift occurs. He starts to notice the silence, This silence does something interesting and makes him think about you more. Human psychology plays a big role here. When we are constantly exposed to something, we get used to it and may not appreciate it as much. But when that thing is taken away, we begin to crave it. The same applies to relationships and communication. When you are always in someone's life, they may not fully recognize your impact. But when you are no longer present, they suddenly start to feel the difference. He may start wondering, why hasn't she texted me? Is she losing interest? Has she moved on to someone else? Did I do something wrong? These thoughts can be unsettling. And that's when he starts to miss you. He begins to reminisce about the little things, your laugh, your energy, the way you made him feel. The messages you used to send, the inside jokes, the support you provided, it all comes rushing back to him because now it's no longer there. Another key element at play is the fear of loss. When a man believes that a woman will always be there, he may not feel a sense of urgency to put in effort. But when that belief is shaken, when he starts to feel like he might actually lose you, that's when he realizes just how much you mean to him. The fear of losing something valuable often makes people want it even more. Additionally, your absence gives him time to evaluate his own feelings. Sometimes, when someone is constantly around, it's easy to take their presence for granted without actually thinking deeply about how much they mean to you. But when that person steps away, it forces introspection. He begins to ask himself, do I really like her? Do I miss her because I care or just because I'm used to her attention? Have I been taking her for granted? This period of space allows him to determine whether his feelings for you are real. If he truly values you, he will realize that he doesn't like the feeling of not having you around, and that will push him to take action. He may start reaching out more, making more of an effort, or even confessing that he didn't realize how much he cared until you step back. On the other hand, if he does not miss you, if he does not reach out or seem affected by your absence, then that is also a valuable revelation. It shows you that he was likely not as invested in the relationship as you were. And while that realization may be painful, it ultimately saves you from wasting your time on someone who does not truly appreciate your presence. Creating space for him to miss you is not about playing games or manipulating his emotions. It's about giving both of you the opportunity to see the relationship more clearly. It allows him to understand your value, and it allows you to see whether he genuinely cares. And in the end, that space can make all the difference in determining the true nature of your connection. When you stop texting and calling a man, you shift your focus away from him and back onto yourself. This change is not just about communication, it's about reclaiming your time, energy, and your emotional well-being. Too often, when we are invested in someone, we unconsciously prioritize them in ways that overshadow our own needs. We check our phones frequently, waiting for a response. We spend mental energy analyzing their words and actions. We adjust our schedules and habits to accommodate them. And in doing so, we sometimes lose sight of our own personal growth, happiness, and ambitions. But when you step back and stop initiating contact, something remarkable happens. You redirect that energy toward yourself. Instead of spending time wondering about him, waiting for his texts, or worrying about his level of interest, you start investing in yourself. This could mean diving into hobbies you enjoy, focusing on career goals, improving your physical or mental health, or simply spending more time with friends and family. One of the most liberating feelings is realizing that you do not need to depend on anyone else for your happiness. When you stop making a man the center of your attention, you allow yourself to become the center of your own life. You start to rediscover what makes you happy outside of a relationship. You reconnect with your passions, things that bring you joy, fulfillment, and excitement. This shift in focus is incredibly empowering. Instead of chasing validation from someone else, you begin to cultivate self-love. You remind yourself that your worth is not determined by whether or not he texts or calls. You are valuable, with or without his attention. And when you embrace this mindset, you become more confident, independent, and emotionally resilient. Another important aspect of focusing on yourself is that it allows you to see the relationship more clearly. When you are constantly reaching out, you might overlook red flags or make excuses for behavior that doesn't align with what you truly deserve. But when you take a step back, you gain a fresh perspective. You start asking yourself important questions. Is he really the right person for me? Does he bring me happiness? Or am I just attached to the idea of him? Am I giving more than I'm receiving in this relationship? This period of self-reflection is crucial because it helps you make decisions that are best for your well-being. Instead of acting out of emotional dependency, you start making choices based on what truly serves you. Additionally, when you focus on yourself, you naturally become more attractive not just to him, but to others as well. Confidence, independence, and self-assurance are qualities that draw people in. When you are living your best life, engaged in things that make you happy, and exuding positive energy, people naturally want to be around you. And if he truly cares, he will notice this shift. He will see that you are not sitting around waiting for his attention, you are thriving on your own. This may make him realize that he needs to step up if he wants to be a part of your life. The beauty of this process is that regardless of what he does, whether he reaches out or not, you win. If he steps up and puts in more effort, great. If he doesn't, you haven't lost anything. In fact, you've gained something even better, your sense of self. By focusing on yourself instead of him, you reclaim your power, your happiness, and your freedom. When you stop texting and calling a man, you are making a silent but powerful statement about your expectations. You are showing him, and more importantly, yourself, what you are willing to accept in a relationship. This is not about playing games, it's about setting a standard for how you deserve to be treated. Many times when we are interested in someone, we go out of our way to show them affection, effort, and consistency. While there's nothing wrong with this, problems arise when that energy is not being reciprocated. If you find yourself always initiating conversations, planning meetups, or keeping the connection alive while he puts in minimal effort, you may unintentionally be teaching him that he doesn't have to do much to keep you around. But when you stop texting and calling first, you break that pattern. You show that you are not someone who will settle for one-sided effort. You communicate without saying a word that if he wants to be in your life, he must also contribute. This is a crucial shift because people, especially in relationships, respond to the standards we set for them. If you continue to tolerate inconsistency, lack of effort, or emotional unavailability, the other person has no reason to change. But when you establish boundaries by pulling back, you give them the opportunity to step up and meet your expectations or walk away if they are not willing to. Setting a standard also helps you cultivate self-respect. It is a reminder to yourself that you deserve someone who values your time and presence. It reinforces the idea that you are not desperate for attention, and you will not chase someone who does not make an effort for you. Instead of accepting breadcrumbs, you hold out for the kind of love and effort that you truly deserve. Additionally, when you set a high standard for how you want to be treated, you naturally attract people who are capable of meeting that standard. Men who are emotionally mature and genuinely interested in you will recognize and appreciate your self-respect. They will see you as someone worth pursuing, someone who knows her worth, and someone who will not tolerate half-hearted effort. On the other hand, men who are not willing to meet your expectations may drift away, but that is a good thing. You don't want to waste time on someone who is not capable of giving you the effort and commitment you deserve. Another important aspect of setting a standard is that it forces a man to evaluate his own behavior. When you stop initiating, he has to ask himself, have I been putting in enough effort? Am I showing her that I care? If he values you, he will recognize that he needs to step up, make an effort, and show consistency. If he does not, then that is a clear indicator that he was never truly invested in the first place. By stepping back and allowing him to take the lead, you create a space where his true intentions are revealed. A man who genuinely cares about you will take action. He will reach out, make plans, and show you through his actions that he wants to be a part of your life. But a man who was only interested in the convenience of your attention rather than in you as a person will likely fade away. And while that realization might be disappointing, it is ultimately a blessing because it prevents you from wasting your time and energy on the wrong person. At its core, setting a standard is about valuing yourself. It's about knowing that you are worthy of effort, love, and consistency. It's about refusing to lower your expectations for someone who isn't willing to meet you halfway. When you establish these boundaries, you don't just improve your romantic relationships, you also cultivate a deeper sense of self-worth and confidence. And that, in itself, is incredibly powerful. When you stop texting and calling a man, you create a situation where his true feelings and level of investment become clear. As long as you are the one constantly initiating conversations and keeping the connection alive, it is difficult to tell whether he is genuinely interested in you or simply responding out of habit, convenience, or politeness. But when you stop reaching out, you allow him to reveal how he truly feels about you without any external pressure. At first, you might feel uneasy. You might wonder if he even noticed your absence. You might overanalyze the situation, questioning whether you should have waited a little longer or if he is just too busy to text you. But as time goes on, his actions or lack thereof will give you a clear answer. If he truly cares about you and values your presence in his life, he will notice the shift. He will start to wonder why you are no longer texting him first, why you are not as available as you used to be. And if he genuinely wants to keep the connection alive, he will take action, he will reach out, check in on you, and make an effort to maintain communication. On the other hand, if he does not contact you or if he only reaches out sporadically with minimal effort, that tells you everything you need to know. It shows that he was never as invested as you were, that he was only engaging in the relationship because it was convenient for him, not because he was truly interested in you. This can be a painful realization, but it is also incredibly valuable. It prevents you from continuing to pour your energy into someone who does not reciprocate your feelings. One of the biggest mistakes people make in relationships is assuming that effort should be one-sided. If a man truly values you, he will want to talk to you, spend time with you, and make you feel special. You will not have to chase him or remind him of your presence. When you stop initiating contact, you remove the possibility of making excuses for his lack of effort. It forces you to see the situation for what it really is. This process also helps you break free from any illusions you may have created about the relationship. When you are always the one putting in effort, you might convince yourself that things are going well, even when they are not. But when you take a step back and let him show you his level of interest, you see the truth. You see whether he genuinely wants to be with you or whether he was just going along with things because it required no effort on his part. It is important to understand that a man who is genuinely interested in you will not let too much time pass without reaching out. He will not risk losing you because he knows your value. A man who truly wants you in his life will make sure you feel wanted and appreciated. He will not just respond when you text first, he will take the initiative because he wants to talk to you, not because you reminded him to. Additionally, by stepping back and observing his response, you give yourself the opportunity to make a more informed decision about the relationship. Instead of being blinded by your own effort and emotional attachment, you can objectively evaluate whether this is a man who is truly willing to meet you halfway. If he does not step up, you will know that he is not the right person for you. Finding out where you truly stand in a man's life is not always easy, but it is necessary. It allows you to avoid wasting time on someone who does not appreciate you, and it clears the path for you to find someone who does. And once you gain this clarity, you are in a much stronger position to decide what is best for your happiness and emotional well-being. When you stop texting and calling a man, you create space for the relationship to develop in a way that reflects its true nature, rather than being forced or one-sided. In any connection, whether romantic or otherwise, there needs to be a balance of effort. If you are the one always initiating conversations, making plans, and keeping things alive, you may unknowingly be steering the relationship in a direction it wouldn't naturally go on its own. By pulling back, you allow things to unfold organically, revealing whether the connection has real potential or if it is only surviving because of your continuous effort. One of the biggest mistakes people make in relationships is trying to control the pace or direction of the connection too much. When you constantly reach out, check in, or try to keep things exciting, you are essentially managing the relationship. But a relationship should not feel like something you have to manage. It should be mutual, reciprocal, and natural. When you stop initiating all the time, you give the other person a chance to show how much they actually want to be part of your life. If a man is truly interested in you, he will take that opportunity to step up. He will reach out, plan dates, and make sure you know that he values you. He won't just let things fizzle out because he understands that relationships require effort from both sides. On the other hand, if he does not step up, if he allows the silence to stretch on indefinitely without checking in, then that tells you everything you need to know about his level of interest. You won't have to guess where you stand. His actions or inaction will make it clear. By allowing the relationship to evolve naturally, you also gain a better understanding of whether it is built on genuine compatibility or just routine and convenience. Sometimes, people stay in situations simply because they are used to them. If you have been the one keeping the relationship afloat, you might not realize that the other person is not actually as excited as you are. But when you step back, you see whether the connection still thrives or whether it slowly fades away. This can be a difficult truth to face, but it is an important one because it helps you avoid wasting time on something that isn't meant to last. Additionally, creating space in the relationship allows both you and the man to assess your true feelings. Sometimes when we are constantly engaged in a dynamic, we don't take the time to evaluate how we actually feel about the person we are involved with. By stepping back, you give yourself the opportunity to reflect. Do you miss him because you genuinely enjoy his presence? Or is it just because you are used to talking to him? Does he bring value and happiness into your life? Or have you just been holding on out of habit? For the man, the space forces him to reflect as well. He has to ask himself if he truly wants to pursue you, if he enjoys your presence, and if he is willing to put in the necessary effort. If he realizes that he values you and doesn't want to lose you, he will make it known. But if he is indifferent, then that is also an answer in itself. Allowing the relationship to develop naturally is also an act of self-respect. It shows that you are not desperate for attention or validation. It communicates that you are willing to walk away from anything that is not reciprocating your energy. This level of confidence and self-assurance is attractive and commands respect. People are drawn to those who know their worth and are not afraid to let go of anything that does not meet their standards. Ultimately, when you stop texting and calling a man, you are allowing the relationship to move at its natural pace. You are giving both yourself and him the opportunity to see if the connection is real or if it was only being sustained by your effort. And regardless of the outcome, this approach ensures that you are never in a position where you are forcing something that isn't meant to be. Instead, you are creating space for the right kind of love, the kind that is mutual, effortless, and truly meant for you. At the end of the day, pulling back from texting and calling a man is not about playing games or manipulating him. It's about valuing yourself, recognizing your worth, and allowing the relationship to unfold naturally. If he truly cares, he will notice your absence, step up, and make an effort to keep you in his life. If he doesn't, then you have your answer. He was never truly invested in the first place. Regardless of the outcome, the most important thing is that you shift your focus back to yourself, your happiness, your growth, and your well-being. You deserve a relationship that is built on mutual effort and respect, not one that requires you to constantly chase and prove your value. So, by stepping back, you give yourself the opportunity to find out who is truly meant to be in your life. And most importantly, you remind yourself that you are enough with or without him.